astronauts. Welcome to the Digital Galaxy Podcast. I'm your pilot, Justin.
And I'm your co pilot, Paul. Buckle up because today in episode 20, we're discussing Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey's Senate hearing. The information in this episode comes from the New York Times, the BBC, and EFF.org. Justin, can you fill the crew in on what this November 17th Senate hearing was all about?
Absolutely. So, the CEOs of Facebook and Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, appeared before members of the Senate Judiciary Committee to defend their company's actions to a moderate speech during the election. They answered 127 questions over a 4 hour span that ranged from flagging posts, banning accounts, alleged bias, the addictive nature of their platforms, and along with several other problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the biggest thing that I drew from this hearing was the discussion on Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act. And the act states, quote, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider, end quote.
So, essentially, what this means is that companies like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter are seen as hosts and not as publishers, because the people using their platform are the publishers. Those companies would not be legally responsible for the content that is posted. According to EFF.org, quote, though there are important exceptions for certain criminal and intellectual property-based claims, CDA 230 creates a broad protection that has allowed innovation and free speech online to flourish, end quote.
Yeah, with that being said, Justin, a lot of the questions directed at Facebook and Twitter during this hearing is claiming that since they started to flag posts and add their own content or comments to those posts, that they are now acting as publishers and wouldn't be covered by the protections of Section 230 of the CDA.
So Senator Ted Cruz certainly thought that, and according to the BBC, Senator Cruz argued with Jack Dorsey and Twitter. Um, they were essentially taking position on a disputed policy when flagging anything about voter fraud. Quote, you're putting up a page that says voter fraud of any kind is exceedingly rare in the United States. That's not linking to a broader conversation. That's taking a disputed policy position, end quote.
Yeah, so Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, I'm sure everyone saw, had banners across the top of their app promoting voter registration for the last couple months. They flagged pretty much any post that discussed the election, including posts about voter fraud and even some political ads. Certain Republicans say that they overstepped their boundaries as a protected platform under Section 230, but some Democrats argue that they didn't do enough to stop some harmful content on their apps.
So, the former strategist to President Trump, Steve Bannon, was kicked off of Twitter when he suggested that Dr. Anthony Fauci should be beheaded. With the same post, his Facebook account was frozen, not permanently disabled. Mark
Mm-hmm.
Zuckerberg said the account was given a quote strike and the post was taken down, but that Facebook's policies do not require the account to be immediately banned. Twitter, by contrast, permanently suspended the account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so where does all this conversation lead to? What can the crew expect to change when it comes to Facebook and Twitter?
So, according to New York Times, quote, Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut called for tougher data privacy laws, changes to a law that gives company legal protection for content posted by users, and greater antitrust action, end quote.
Yeah, I mean, this can definitely call for change on the social media platforms. Maybe even some tweaking of, Section 230 of the CDA.
Yeah, definitely. I know that both companies said they wanted to be more transparent,
Hmm.
particularly around the way they moderate their platforms. Both tech leaders also accepted the fact that Section 230 needs to be revisited.
Hmm. Absolutely. So, in summary, CEOs of Facebook and Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, answered 127 questions in a 4 hour Senate hearing on November 17th. They discussed the flagging of information and faced several questions about the legality of publishing their comments on public posts that may violate their protection from Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act. Lawmakers on both sides are calling for change, and the revision of the act is forcing both companies to become more transparent in their operations.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Don't forget to follow us on our channels on YouTube, Twitter, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. You can also find this episode in written form on our website, digitalgalaxypodcast.com. This episode was created by Forest Social, a social media app where you are in charge of your data and community. Check it out at forestsocial.com. Thanks for coming along on our journey. Till next time.